Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of In Plain Sight. In episode 5, we discovered that the first time the Mars origin myth was mentioned was associated with the Thule Society and the Vril Society, the two secret societies that formed the spiritual ideology of the Third Reich. We also discovered that despite Germany publicly losing the war, high-level Nazis never paid for their crimes and instead were given positions in the most influential and exclusive areas of government through Operation Paperclip. In fact, it wasn't long until they began to line the halls of the space program and even advise presidents. In this episode, we are going to continue following this alien creator god Mars origin myth into modern times. After all, if the Nazis just continued operating in America, why would they leave their esoteric beliefs behind?
Okay, all right.
We have learned a great deal about the planet Mars. Mars.
Add it up.
Dr. Werner von Braun.
In an interesting twist, the two fathers of the modern Mars origin myth also had very controversial beginnings. In the early 70s, the themes of the Mars origin myth appeared to resurface through two main people, Erich von Daniken and Zecharia Sitchin. Erich von Daniken began perpetuating the idea of a superior, colonizing alien presence in his famous work, Chariots of the Gods. In this book, Daniken suggests that the spiritual and metaphorical descriptions in various creation texts were actually primarily about physical contact from alien gods. He claims that we have not been taking spiritual texts literally enough, and that if we were to re-examine them through a hyper-material lens, we would see that ancient stories and traditions that describe the development of our astral body and Merkaba are really describing the mechanics of spaceships. Pyramids and temple complexes lose their spiritual emphasis as well, and become landing pads for UFOs. Perhaps the most haunting and ominous aspect to his work is not the eradication of the original spiritual meaning of these topics, the repeated suggestion that these space gods will one day be returning. Surprisingly, the most controversial aspect of von Daniken is not that he was rewriting the human origin story, but that he was attempting to rewrite the human origin story from a prison cell. The modern father of the Mars origin myth has a sordid past that is littered with fraud and embezzlement convictions, prison time, and even deep connections to Nazi propagandists. Erich von Daniken was born in 1935 and attended a Jesuit boys' school in Freiburg, Switzerland. He spent quite a bit of time in Davos working for the Hotel Rosenhügel, which is where he wrote his most famous work to date, Chariots of the Gods. While he was writing his masterpiece, he was being slapped with embezzlement charges. At one point, the court psychiatrist diagnosed him as being a pathological liar. He was ultimately convicted of embezzlement and fraud and served a year in prison. The scandals continued, as while Chariots of the Gods is most associated with von Daniken, it was not von Daniken who was fully responsible for it. The manuscript was completely reworked by a ghostwriter named Wilhelm Utz Utermann under the alias of Wilhelm Rogersdorf. Utermann was a controversial figure with a Nazi past who often used aliases. He was a writer for the Nazi Party newspaper Völkischer Beobachter. The newspaper titled itself the, quote, fighting paper of the National Socialist Movement of Greater Germany, and was acquired by the Thule Society in 1918. Its editor was the famous Nazi occultist Dietrich Eckart, and it became the primary outlet of the Nazi Party. So, von Daniken's foundational book was completely rewritten by Utermann, and von Daniken became the face of the theory, the face of the book. To date, the book has sold over 70 million copies and made von Daniken a multimillionaire. Its core theme has sprung into countless documentaries, TV series, and conferences. Zecharia Sitchin is another pillar of the modern Mars origin myth, and his past is just as checkered and controversial as von Daniken's. Sitchin was born in Soviet Azerbaijan in 1920 and moved to Israel and then New York. He worked primarily as a journalist and editor, and also spent time as a shipping executive. Sitchin came to fame by writing a series of books, beginning with The 12th Planet in 1976. Like von Daniken, his work was almost immediately picked up and propagated to a worldwide audience through television segments, documentaries, and speaking engagements. And by the mid-2000s, his new origin myth had become the backbone of the alternative and spiritual communities. In fact, the word Anunnaki, which was not in common use before Sitchin, became an accepted word used to describe the fearsome yet parental progenitor gods. It also absorbed the meaning of the biblical Nephilim, or the biblical giants, angels, Atlanteans, and any other humanoids that seemed to visit the earth in its ancient past. Sitchin's work was based on his unique translation of the Sumerian tablets. Sumerian tablets are crafted, dried clay stones that are stamped with a symbol language similar to hieroglyphics. These tablets were used to record the most mundane activities, like tracking how much food is stored, to recording tales of gods and the positions of the stars. In his spare time, Zecharia began interpreting these tablets and discovered that they contained the missing spiritual link for humanity, an entirely new origin story. In this story, Sitchin revealed that, like von Daniken, we weren't taking creation myths literally enough. Passages that were traditionally seen as metaphorical or even describing an inner process were really telling us something much more shocking and even scientific. Sitchin's accounts of our beginnings were elaborate and involved specific details like that humanity was genetically engineered in a lab, by alien progenitor gods. Like the Aldebaran mythos of the Third Reich, these superior alien creator gods moved from planet to planet, seeding it with life and civilization. Like the Thule Society's creation myth, the progenitor gods made stops on Mars and eventually settled on the Earth to create human civilization as we know it. According to Sitchin, there was also a hidden planet, Nibiru, or Planet X, that was looming behind the sun on a strange elliptical orbit, watching and waiting to return, a strange vestige of our forgotten past and creators. Its eventual return marking a new era and reunion with our gods, with our true creators. One of the issues with Sitchin's work is that it was not subject to rigorous scholarly debate. At the time Sitchin was writing his books, these tablets were obscure and were not well known by the public. Cuneiform was considered to be a dead language that was really not closely related to any known language system. In fact, they were so obscure that there weren't even really many scholars that understood them or could read them. Thus, Sitchin faced little opposition for his giant claims in the earlier days of his work. However, Sitchin's influence was on borrowed time. As it turns out, Sitchin completely fabricated not only his entire body of work, but also his credentials.
Was our race genetically engineered 6,000 years ago? Were we created by beings from distant space to work as laborers towards some unknown end?
Could this alleged new knowledge uncovered in Earth's little corner of the universe be considered Genesis revisited? This is the belief of the world-renowned archaeologist, linguist, and expert in the field of cultural anthropology, Zecharia Sitchin. This is the belief of the world-renowned archaeologist, linguist, and expert in the field of cultural anthropology, Zecharia Sitchin.
I'm Zecharia Sitchin. I devoted a lifetime to the study of ancient civilizations, ancient languages, their art, their beliefs, and the knowledge that they had. And the question is, when you study, when you look at all that, is it myth, is it mythology, or did it really happen? I believe it all really happened.
When Sitchin first emerged, he claimed that he was an archaeologist. In reality, he had a degree in economics and a basic reading level understanding of Hebrew. Qualified scholars began to read Sitchin's work and expose it as being a complete fabrication. His dramatic and strange account of alien gods creating humans and then forcing them to work in gold mines is non-existent on the tablets. The 12th planet is also disputed by various scholars, and the tablet that was used by Sitchin to illustrate this extrasolar body was far more likely to be an image of the Pleiades. Now that the entire library of cuneiform tablets is available online, anyone can go and look up the various themes mentioned in Sitchin's work and do their own research. The unfortunate reality is that the level of propaganda went so deep into the spiritual and ufology community that the alien creator god myth has become a dogmatic religion.
Gale Crater, Mars. August 6th, 2012. The Curiosity lands on the Martian surface to evaluate the suitability of the planet for human exploration. The 1-ton rover will find signs of surface water, a key element for sustaining life.
I think one of the very fascinating things from a biology point of view is, let's say Mars for a period in its history, was similar enough to Earth that life could start to evolve. You could ask the question, how far did it make it? What happened historically on Mars? When did it start to, say, lose an atmosphere? When was it not able to sustain it anymore? And we could learn a lot about the processes on Earth that were successful by, I think, comparing it to how far, if at all, did life get on Mars and where did it fail?
But is it possible, as some ancient astronaut theorists believe, that Curiosity's mission may also reveal evidence that the mysterious beings known as the Anunnaki also once inhabited Mars?
Zachariah Sitchin theorized that the Anunnaki were coming from this planet Nibiru, and that Mars was like a way station for them to come from Nibiru to Mars and then to Earth. So you would think that if this is the case, that on Mars we would find some kind of traces of this Anunnaki civilization there. Are we going to find pyramids, giant dolmens, huge constructions on Mars, just like we have here on Earth? I suspect we will.
If an extraterrestrial presence on Mars can be found, might a global awareness of our own Anunnaki ancestry also be possible? According to author and Sumerian researcher Zachariah Sitchin, Nibiru, the home of the Anunnaki, is on an elliptical path that brings the planet into our orbit every 3,450 years. And the next visit is projected to be in the year 2900.
Zechariah wrote in the Book of the End of Days about some of the prophecy of the return. Next time the Nibiru comes around, there should be another appearance of Anunnaki. Some of the Anunnaki may be really excited and happy to see what developed and what we have become. Some may be upset that we've gone too far. Maybe we've overstepped our bounds. They may pass judgment on us, and it could be good or it could be bad.
The Anunnaki was an archaeological society established by the Third Reich that strove to validate their esoteric beliefs about human origins. They believed that their ancestors were the extraterrestrial gods of Atlantis and Thule, which Thule is modern-day Antarctica. They believed that they were the descendants of these Atlantean gods, and that after the Great Deluge, they went to form many high societies, including Babylon or Sumeria. They considered these regions key to their divine past and potentially evidence of their innate, advanced nature. This belief was so deeply part of their religious belief system that they even took castes and measured people's faces who were thought to have interbred with their superhuman alien ancestors. Because they considered themselves the progenitors of all advanced civilization, they organized massive archaeological digs in many different locations to recover as many artifacts as they could. This effort of the Third Reich and the secret societies of Germany to legitimize their origin story through the Anunnaki is often written off as the bizarre efforts of a dictator gone mad. However, what was really occurring was a methodical, in-depth effort to establish a kind of divine right for themselves, a kind of genetic and spiritual authority, a kind of authority through proving that they were the children of the space gods or the Martians. One of the most targeted areas, archaeologically speaking, for the German powers was Sumeria or Babylon. It began with the German archaeologist Robert Koldewey unearthing the Ishtar Gate and many other relics of Old Babylon at the turn of the century. These gates still stand proud in Berlin and can be seen at the Pergamon Museum. But let's bring ourselves back to those Sumerian tablets. The majority of the Sumerian tablets were discovered later, in 1929, by another archaeologist named Julius Jordan. Jordan worked under the same German archaeological agency as Koldewey and was leading the expeditions in the area. Jordan was digging on the banks of the Euphrates in what is now Iraq when he came across a vast trove of tablets, an entire library of them. Though Jordan led many successful digs, he was a controversial character. The UK National Archives claimed that he was a Nazi Party leader and that he was a propaganda director for Iraq. Jordan was also allegedly representing Germany as an intelligence officer, and as the conflict in Europe began to heat up, was accused of conspiracy and trying to organize a coup. He was asked to leave the country and not allowed to finish his expedition. Agatha Christie confirmed these allegations in her 1933 autobiography, revealing that while on a trip to the Middle East with her husband, she encountered Jordan and was shocked by his intense Nazi ideology. Who knew that just decades later, the Sumerian tablets would become the sole focus of Sitchin's work and the foundation of a new origin myth for humanity? In fact, it seems each decade a more elaborate version of the Anunnaki ancient astronaut story surfaces. Instead of just one race of superior creator gods like we saw with the Thule Society and early Sitchin work, there is now a federation of them. A federation of space people that act as a kind of centralized governance over all beings in the cosmos, including humanity. A United Nations of space.
Some of the Anunnaki may be really excited and happy to see what developed and what we have become. Some may be upset that we've gone too far. Maybe we've overstepped our bounds. They may pass judgment on us, and it could be good or it could be bad.
This federation, like Planet X and Nibiru, is not seen, but ever present. Special cosmic ambassadors become the exclusive representation of the Federation, the new priests for alien races that act as powerful caretakers of mankind. And very much like the Sitchin and von Daniken mythos, where the gods return, we are waiting for the Federation to appear and initiate us into our next level of planetary development. The next stage of development for humankind, of course, includes hybridization and genetic modification, just like the original creation myth of the secret societies of Germany. To keep the narrative saturated, various documentaries that are spin-offs of the alien god mythology also appear. It seems it doesn't matter how outrageous or backwards the information is, the effect is always the same. People are drawn outward, outside of themselves. Spiritual concepts are over-materialized or over-literalized. God is not within us in this particular belief system. No. God is primarily outside of us, working through alien proxies. In fact, within this paradigm, this Mars origin myth paradigm, this alien god paradigm, our very evolution stems from outside of ourselves, Human evolution happens externally, physically, through genetic modification and hybridization, and eventually through transhumanism and technology. This belief system, this paradigm is the paradigm of the Antichrist, the impulse that draws us perpetually outside of ourselves, that draws us outside of ourselves during the time that we need to turn inward, discover our inner Christ consciousness. In fact, these backwards ideologies thrive in our contentious modern chaos, where more and more people don't trust the government and are turning to alternative theories in an attempt to find the truth. And so, we find ourselves in a strange time where everything seems to be changing and everything seems as though it's being rewritten before our eyes. But by whom? Who exactly is trying to uproot us from our sense of truth and reality? What is the spiritual or esoteric power in creating an environment like this, creating a lie? There is a principle in black magic, which is that first you create a story, a lie, a paradigm that is false and not based in reality, a creation that comes from you. And then you spread that lie. And because that lie came from you, because you created a paradigm, you receive all of the energy from it if people believe it. And thus, all of the lies a black magic group creates in the world that are believed by humanity, that are given energy by humanity, become a direct source of power for them. Black magicians create a false world within our natural world that they rule. And they try to get humanity to believe it. And the more people that believe the lie, the more powerful and validated the magicians become. They become kings or gods of a false world they created. And those that believe it are ushered into the false world, an unnatural world. You see, the Mars origin myth is like a spell. The alien creator god myth is like a spell. If you tell someone enough over and over and over again, they'll believe it and they will begin associating with it. They'll invest in it and they'll make it their truth. They'll even fight for it. If you tell someone a lie long enough, they will become the lie. The more that you become the lie, the more you diverge from reality, from nature, from yourself, until one day there is nothing natural about you. There's nothing organic left. There is nothing real. So, as hard as it is to challenge what we believe, to second guess the propaganda that pours from the screens we now seem to worship, we must. Because we are creators, and what we believe becomes real. It has never been more important to question what we are reading and what we are seeing. And our ability to question and our ability to discern will define who we are and how we fare in the future. Thank you, everyone, for joining me this evening for this episode of In Plain Sight, Mars Mysteries. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this material with your friends and family. And if you enjoy my work, please consider making a one-time donation or joining my website as a premium member, where you can receive forums and live Q&As and be part of a really amazing community in Mystics Online. I'll see you in the next episode.